This edition of Mac Voices is brought to you by Harry's, the shaving gear you will respect, not throw away. To get $5 off your first order, go to harrys.com and use the offer code MacVoices. Welcome to the MacJury on Mac Voices. This is the Talk of the Mac community. I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we have a great panel together tonight to talk to you about some of the happenings in the tech world, some that may not be right on point if you are absolutely an Apple fan, but everything seems to affect Apple today, and Apple affects everything. So we're going to kick it around and see if we can get a little wisdom. I'm going to go across the screen in my order of the screen. First up, it's been a while since he's been here, Mr. Jeff Gamet. Jeff, it's great to have you back. It's been way too long.
It is. I've been missing you, Chuck. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you back. And since you were here last, you even have a little bit of a new venture going.
If you're talking about the movies, Chuck, I was young. I just needed the money.
No, not that new venture.
Oh, you're talking about the new podcast.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that's awkward. Yeah. TMO Daily Observations. I'm doing that every morning, and I randomly, well, not quite randomly, but to everyone else it appears that way. I grab two of my other writers and just hash out ideas with them. And for them, it appears random because they actually don't know if they're going to be on the show each day until I tell them. So that's kind of fun too.
It is, and it's become one of my essential daily listens. I have to say, it's
awesome. Thanks.
It's nice. It's relatively short. It's concise. There's a little bit of fun with it, but there's also a lot of good analysis. So, good job.
Thank you.
Good job. Next up, one of our business experts, Mr. Mark Fuccio. Mark, it's great to have you back as always.
Hi, Chuck. It's good to see you and Jeff, who I don't think I've seen either of you since Macworld. Many months ago. So look forward to having a good discussion here today.
Absolutely. For the folks who don't know you, which there's probably one or two out there, where can we find you and what's your claim to fame?
I live out here in Silicon Valley, and I run a consulting business. I help a lot of companies plan their go-to-market, help them figure out does their technology, is it a solution looking for a problem, or is it something that solves pain that people will spend money to get fixed? I've done a lot in recent years in the storage industry, but I've had all manner of engagements, including once upon a time a client whose product was a high-energy laser that made a piece of light 1 inch long. So it's always something new and very interesting.
That's an interesting little tidbit. I did not know that one.
And the next thing is maybe there will be a client who can make Jeff Gamet wear pants.
I doubt it.
I do too. Yeah, I do too. Rounding out the MacJury for his first time here, I'm really pleased to have Jon Seff join us. Jon, it's great to have you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Here I am.
Yeah, here you are. Yeah, it's terrific. So you are, well, I'll let you tell the folks who you are, where you come from, what you're doing, and all that.
Okay, well, I spent the last 15 years as an editor with Macworld, the publication, not the expo, although I was involved with that. I was most recently the executive editor there, and I also worked on the Tech Hive website that IDG had too. And right now, I am looking for my next big thing, and in the meantime, I've been doing some blogging over at jonseff.net and doing some freelance work for Macworld and for some other places, and spending a lot of time with my kids right now too, which is kind of fun. So, at least, even though I'm a bum right now, at least I'm a good dad. So.
I don't know about that, but to me, it just means that, folks, if there's anybody out there that needs some high-powered talent, right there it sits, just waiting for you.
John, your blog's pretty cool. People should be paying you for that.
Is that an offer?
No.
Okay, well, if anybody else wants to make an offer.
I'm just tossing that out there so that someone that has more money than I do can pay you.
All right, well, I'm looking for people like that.
Great. Great. And as I always say later in the show, but I'll say it now, everybody's contact information will be in the show notes of all their bios and everything that they do. So if you want to hire anybody, or if you have pants to send Jeff, that's where you'll go. Guys, this MacJury started with a series of tweets between Mark and I about Microsoft last week. The statements that were made about the grand vision of Microsoft that seemed to be a little wordy, and I'm being polite, and then the announcement, of course, that they were laying off a significant number of people. So, Mark, I'm going to turn to you and kind of let you rehash what your thinking is on this particular issue. Because in some ways it seemed to be mixed messages. In hindsight, one was telegraphing the other, but it seemed to be a bit of a mixed message at first read.
So I think there were probably 3 key memos that are on the web that people can look at. The first was on July 10th, and that was actually a formal publication on the Microsoft website of communication from Satya Nadella, their new CEO, to their troops. And it has a certain amount of design. It has pictures of him and other Microsoft people, and it has text in between. And I read it, and I wanted to stick a pencil in my eye because I couldn't understand WTF he was talking about. I mean, it was just complete, total confusion. So I think I tweeted, and I think that caught your attention, is that I tweeted a link, basically saying new MSFT CEO Nadella, memo translation, we're going to lay people off, we'll continue to bloviate and hope things go well. And then a week later, he issued another letter or memo basically saying that they're laying off 18,000 people. And that also had a lot of tortured sentence structures and phrases that go nowhere. And that one I tweeted out, and basically with a sort of tweet saying, "Am I being too demanding CEOs write clearly? Writing is thought. This is confused." And that caught your attention. Other folks had retweeted that, and I got a lot of direct and private messages as a result of that.
It wasn't a message. It was actually a Mad Lib, and every other word was synergies. So it was up to you to fill in the blanks there. That's why you didn't get it.
You're right. It's my fault. It's my shortcomings. But I think that this really just shows a failure, and we'll be able to get into this, in this discussion. But for a relatively new CEO, it's less than 6 months on his tenure, to come out with such garbled communications, and then to add insult to injury the same day, Stephen Elop, the ex-Microsoft exec who went to Nokia and cut off, all their corporate vital organs, and, sold it back to Microsoft. He wrote an unbelievable memo, basically, congratulating themselves on all the great job they're doing and how much hard work they had to do. And, oh, by the way, we're laying a bunch of you suckers off. So, that was a total fail. And it just seems to me this is, on one hand, this is very typical of, I think, some of the communication problems at Microsoft. But in a larger sense, it's more indicative of problems that a lot of corporations have, when they communicate to their different constituencies, be it, investors, employees, shareholders. So that's what happened, and here we are tonight.
I'm going to go to bat for Microsoft. I know.
Oh.
Well, that's a good thing we're sitting down. Actually, I'm going to go to bat for Satya. I think that he is trying to figure out how to beat his Kobayashi Maru right now. and so he's having to deal with the fact that he needed to gently get the word out to employees and investors that they were about to lay off a buttload of people. And so he prepared, with help of other people, what he probably thought was a good statement. And then it went through their legal team and became the Mad Lib that it is. When when the legal team got a hold of it. And so he's having to deal with all of that, which makes him look it makes him look like he can't write. But then the other thing that's playing into this is that he has the entire bucket of crap dumped in his lap that is the legacy of Steve Ballmer. And I think Steve did so much to really screw up the corporate culture and the employee structure at Microsoft. Like, if you look at the number of employees they have and the percentage of those that are marketing people, holy crap. It basically, Microsoft was a marketing company that had small divisions to make products and software. That's kind of how the structure is working out. And then he also has to deal with the fact that Steve Ballmer managed to buy off the handset division from Nokia, and Microsoft has no idea how to make phones on this scale. And so now he's having to try and spin that into a positive. And I think that the only positive he can really get out of that is fire almost everyone that was brought in from Nokia, and now we figure out how to monetize for ourselves the patent portfolio that we got as part of that. So I think he's just kind of screwed right now on this whole thing.
So I just observe, and then we can talk about it. Is that you're mixing the fact that he inherited a very difficult situation. It seems like you're implying that that's justification for talking gobbledygook.
Oh no, it's not justification at all. It just
okay.
Yeah. I think
yes.
Yeah, so I clearly tossed in a little bit of my own Mad Lib gobbledygook there because I had you thinking that it was okay. No, it's not okay. And when following my scenario, when the legal team gave him back all of the copy and said, "Here's what we're going to publish," he should have said, "Do you want to be on the list of people that I let go?" and then they fix it so it doesn't sound like he had a stroke. And then they put the copy out, but I don't think he did that part.
Well, so there's obviously an issue between the doing what you need to do part, and Nella had to get rid of a bunch of people. They were bloated, they had this problem, and then when you're talking about there's the communication of it, and it's interesting. A lot of this stuff, these were not PR statements. These were notices to employees, and. But the thing with all those is, of course, is if you're a big company, you have to assume that anything that you send to your employees, even if it says confidential memo written all over it, is going to get put out there. It's going to get they did post this. The message from the 17th is actually on Microsoft's website. But even if it weren't, all this stuff leaks, and so you have to assume that it's going to get out there. So you have to sort of play to all the different groups. And in terms of the stuff that they release for investors, I don't know all the intricacies of the SEC rules, but the stuff they have to say for investors, the stuff they're going to say on their earnings call are going to be a little bit different. But you're talking about the difference between his note and the one from Elop, and the one that begins "Hello there," completely inappropriate tone. And it's this long screed that goes on for, I think it's like 11 paragraphs, and not until the 9th or 10th paragraph does he mention, the bulk of the cuts from Microsoft, 12,500 are from our group. He goes on, this is so great, we've done such a great job, this is what we're doing, the direction we're heading. And then it's buried at the end, and that's just insulting. It's not that they're doing what they have to do, that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it sucks that they have to cut all these jobs, but the worst part of it, I think, is just the communication. And really, no big company is good at this, because he didn't write this statement, as you're saying. He's got communications people and handlers and legal and market research that they do and all this stuff to put together, and it just ends up being little bits and pieces from all these different departments, and then it comes out as this plop thing that's just being thrown out there that really doesn't do anybody any good.
At the end of the day, though, don't you have to? I mean, somebody has to answer for this, and his name is the one on the bottom, and so if it were me, and I realize it's very easy to say, but I would like to have a little say in just what goes out under my hand. And
that seems reasonable.
I would think so, and I just can't imagine that even after we're talking about how it got to that point, but I can't believe that by the time it got back to him that he didn't say, "Hey, we need to cut out about 10 of these paragraphs and just get down to it." That's the part
right.
that as a new CEO of a very powerful, influential company in the tech world, this just seems like I've sort of been rooting for him, like Jeff said, trying to clean up the mess that Ballmer seems to have left, and this just doesn't fill me with any confidence or desire to pay much more attention.
Yeah, I mean, I did appreciate the fact that in his note he mentions, that this is an unfortunate thing, that they're offering severance, they're offering job training, that they're going to help the people that they're laying off, and you don't get that in Elop's message at all, and you don't get that from a lot of companies where they're, it's clearly something that's painful to do for any CEO that has at least a soul. And I feel like, as opposed to Ballmer, I feel like he does have a soul. And so I think, this is not something that he wants to have to do. But I think I did appreciate those tidbits about, we understand this is hard and we're going to do our best. And they're probably fairly generous with the way they're going to help people out, but it's still a crappy situation.
So let's compare this to another announcement that was made, and that was the announcement that Apple and IBM are going to be collaborating, I guess, in the enterprise space in some fashion. That to me, there was a little bit of corporate speak in there, and you would sort of expect it with IBM because of their size and their culture. But it didn't feel to me nearly as convoluted. It may not have been deadly precise, but it just didn't turn me off the way that the Microsoft announcements did.
I would agree. In reading that one, I would characterize the differences as that there was clear that a lot of that was sort of the IBM corporate tone, or maybe their PR tone, and we can talk about that as a separate subject later, because I think it was PR, not legal, that fouled up Nadella's statement. Anyway, coming back, that was clear that that's IBM's preferred or comfortable communication style, and Apple went along with it. Although you would note that later that day, Tim Cook sent a memo to all Apple employees, and it is short, sweet, and to the point. So I think there is, unfortunately, just this expectation that corporate communications, I don't think people know or are comfortable with what they should be or what they should sound like. It's sort of like somebody's thinking, oh my God, this is going to be really tough. And so they create all these, confusing, phrases and paragraphs and stuff that goes nowhere, and, lots of stuff that could easily be edited out and left behind simply because they don't know better. And, I think in many ways, I think that's it. Is that sort of the cause is I see things with some of my clients. They work with their PR agencies, and you get total crap. I mean, just stuff you don't after reading 25 words, you're not going to spend any time reading the rest of the article. And I think that's just so much of stylized corporate communication nowadays that it's the inbred problem is. It seems to me people don't understand what the purpose of the communication is. So as a result, they don't know how to write it. Certainly, simple tests like, is this good writing? Well, how do you know? Read it out loud. There's a difference between spoken English and written English. If you can't read the thing out loud and you're signing it, and that, that's a clear sign that there's something wrong, you need to hit the brakes. And Nadella didn't. Ultimately he's CEO. I mean, I think that, I'd like him to do well, but this is a big warning flag just on his communication and leadership skills.
Mark, and that's a tip, I think everybody should take, no matter what they're writing. Read it out loud. It'll point out things, not just the obvious grammatical errors that you might make, but just how it comes off, how it sounds. If you can't wrap your tongue around it, forget it. I mean, it's not going to work.
Right.
Well, the tone and the purpose between these two obviously is so different, though. I mean, one is trying to spin the fact that Microsoft has they have to get rid of a bunch of people and completely restructure their company, and the other is a very positive, business decision between Apple and IBM, and they don't have to spin it anyway. Apple is weak in the enterprise compared to other places, and partnering with IBM makes a lot of sense. And this is a press release, and a press release is meant often for the media to be able to digest little nuggets and then, unfortunately, in many people's cases, regurgitate that in the story so that they can sort of say what's going on. Mm-hmm. And I thought that the Apple press release, the joint Apple IBM press release, actually was fairly well done, in that it sort of spelled out a couple of key points that they were going to be working on together and gave some really concrete examples. And you walk away from that saying, okay, I understand, what Apple and IBM are going to be doing together. I mean, not the specifics, not exactly how it's all going to work, but that Apple and IBM are going to work together. And from Apple's point of view, this is going to strengthen their position in the enterprise and basically, take whatever's left of BlackBerry's corpse and stomp it to the ground. And
others.
And so, yeah. But of course, as I said, they're working from a nice joint venture here where they can do this stuff, whereas Microsoft is working from we have to basically take everything we've done for the last 15 years and kind of scrap it and start from scratch, and that's going to cost 18,000 people their jobs too. So the tone and the purpose of these is obviously quite different. And you talked about Tim Cook's message that he sent to the employees, and it was succinct, but reading that, I didn't really get a sense. I got more of a sense from the press release about what they're going to be doing together than that was sort of a cheerleader hurrah, like, hey guys, we have this thing, it's going to be great for everybody, let's get behind it. Whereas the press release was actually spelling out specifics and really giving, the investors and writers and the community at large that's following Apple mostly. I was just surprised at the uproar from this, though. Like, oh my God, Apple is working with IBM. The end is near, and people have such short memories of history.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's always funny to me that, Ballmer's gone, Gates is in the background. Whoever was running IBM now, I'm blanking on it. Back when it was Big Blue and everyone, and Jobs was showing it so much disrespect. Jobs is gone. I mean, these are companies, and yeah, they do have a life of their own, but they have different people at the helm. They become different companies, and the times change. And people just forget that so often. I'm sorry, Jeff.
Oh, no, I was just about to say that that people have forgotten that Apple had a very long partnership with IBM for the PowerPC processors that ran all the Macs that we bought for years and years. And were touted as the chips to use over anything Intel or AMD makes. All the way up until the point when Steve Jobs said, actually, Intel makes the processor that we should be using.
They couldn't get to 3 gigahertz, and that was just the end of it.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah, because at one time, those chips were the chips to be using.
Right, but this shows that business is very cyclical, right? And the PowerPC was sort of like maybe 2 tech generations ago. The transition to Intel was maybe 1 tech generation ago. As both Jeff and John were saying, that Apple's strength is not in the enterprise. I think in many ways this could be a great, beautiful marriage. I think not only does this squeeze the last out of Research in Motion's heart, like John was saying. I think this basically has a potential to lock out Android from a lot of accounts. So this I think is very, very beneficial for Apple. And again, I want to explore a point John made, which is there's a difference between what the news release is, the press release, targeting an external constituency, so that they're empowered to do two things. Number one, this is the story, and then take it, assimilate it, and then retransmit it. And then number two, dig in, for more information, more interviews, more follow up, so that they get another hit of outbound communication through the journalistic community. But that's very different. Clearly, the Tim Cook memo to the team, that's very motivational. And I think on that count, Nadella's memo a week ago failed. Because if you read that and you think, okay, I woke up today, I read that thing last night. What should I do different today, as a result of this long communication from the CEO? And on that, it's a complete and utter failure. There's absolutely nothing. And I don't want to sound like I'm really negative on Nadella, but I'm really criticizing his performance, because if you go back and listen to his interviews, with Mossberg and Swisher at their conference, again, he's always, he's not able to give a clear direction. He's sort of bouncing around between ideas. One of the most favorite ones, is he says, "Oh, well, we go into the future backwards, so we see everything from our behind." It's sort of like,
I missed that one.
Yeah, I mean, we think,
Was he wearing pants when he said that?
I would hope not. Otherwise, he's going to walk into walls.
I hope so. I hope so. And again, it goes back to sort of my first impression from Nadella when he was announced as CEO. And this, I think, indicates a bigger Microsoft, corporate communications issue with their entire culture, and all of their hired agencies. And that is, they profile Nadella. They have, some shill walking through, Microsoft offices and asking him different questions. And, Nadella presented it one way, which I think was a disaster, and they should have had a little bit of sense, or he certainly should have had some better sense to realize, I'm not being presented well. This needs to be different. Now, let me tell you what that was. He's going through and, they're asking him, so who is Satya? And he says, I've been here 23 years. I'm very interested. There's a lot of courses online. I always find myself signing up for more courses, and I can't finish any of them, and I sign them up more again. Complete, utter, full stop. What they just let their CEO say is, I can't target a goal and pursue it to completion. I start more stuff than I'm able to finish. The entire team is a bunch of jokers. Instead, they should have cut its video. You can edit it. And they should have told him, Satya, that's not the right thing to say. It makes you sound like you can't finish anything. Instead, he could have said, well, the beauty of, the internet, you have all these online courses. I'm signing up all the time for different things to enrich myself. There's tremendously, educational and valuable resources online. That would be same thing, but
leaving out
one makes him look incompetent and it damns the entire team, and the other makes him look more approachable and relatable to everybody who's listening.
What did you say, Jeff?
Wow. Apparently, I shouldn't be CEO of Microsoft because I completely forgot what I just said.
That's all right.
Well, you should. It sounds like.
Yeah.
Or I should. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think the bigger issue for most of the world was really, not who is Nadella, but who is he not. And I think the fact that he's not Steve Ballmer was really just a guy who's very different from Steve Ballmer. It was what people were looking for. And someone who's soft-spoken, someone who is not like sweating and screaming at people at the top of his lungs. Mm-hmm. And, I think just being so different from the last guy was partially what they're going for. And, I agree, it could be more polished, and they probably need a better job of editing and presenting stuff in a better light. But the not Steve Ballmer part is probably the most important thing on his resume right now.
One thing
that is a big feather in his cap right now.
Oh, yeah. One thing that struck me about this, to pull back and maybe take a little bit of a larger view, is this just seems to be a problem with Microsoft in general now for a long time. is they just don't seem to, I don't know whether they don't know what their message is or whether they just don't know how to communicate it. But you think about the ads for the Surface. I mean, I'm sure a healthy number of the layoffs are dancers somewhere that are unemployed.
We can live in hope.
Yeah, you look at some of that and just how unappetizing those ads were in so many ways. There were a couple that may have been a little cute, but they really didn't drive home anything. They sure didn't want to, at least for me, they never made me want to say, maybe I should check out a Surface. It just seems like communication at its core is not part of Microsoft. Is that fair?
I have a theory. There was a news story, I think this morning, where it was saying that the magnitude of the layoffs, they announced direct layoffs, but indirectly, they're planning to trim, their contractors who, because they're contractors, do not count as employees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there, the article indicated that there may be as many as 60,000 around, their corporate campus. And if that's the case, I think the theory I have is that the way to explain it is they're outsourcing too much, and you get into sort of agency and alignment of interest problems. And that is, it's one thing for somebody who lives and breathes Microsoft, to recognize this is what we believe, this is how we want to communicate. When that gets transferred, if that gets transferred externally, no external agent is going to have the same sort of either knowledge base or motivation or reward system so that they really take to heart what it is that Microsoft is doing. And that's a problem that you can see everywhere. In some of the other places, people have talked about how Samsung's product announcements either fall so flat or border on sexism or border on irrelevant. Again, they're the same sort of thing. General press coverage is that Samsung, has inordinate, they scale their marketing spending in proportion to sales, and they outsource it and they localize it into different countries around the world. And if that's true, then this is to use the analogy, it's the tail wagging the dog, and that is, it's all these other helpers, if you will. They're not people at the company who aren't motivated, don't share the vision, they don't have the passion that the company has, but they're the ones in charge for communication. It's like people say, the most important, the largest impact that somebody has in facing your customer is is either sales or customer service. And if those sort of functions, are outsourced, as is marketing, communications, and things, it's going to be resulting in complete distortions. And I think ultimately that's what is happening here. I suspect that Nadella is a bright individual. I mean, he's obviously very, very bright, but I think that it seems that he's failing, that he's not maybe developing a set of points of what he wants to say. He's letting the other people in the organization around him inject crap. And so I'm positive that he can change. If that's not the case, then that has very dire and very different consequences.
This edition of Mac Voices is brought to you by Harry's, the shaving gear you respect, not throw away. I've been telling you about why I use and love Harry's razors and blades, and I'm going to keep telling you until you're convinced that you need to at least give Harry's a try to improve your shaving life. That's how impressed I am with Harry's shaving experience. And this goes for the ladies in the audience too. If you do a little research, you'll find there are virtually no differences between those expensive razors that they sell for men and those expensive razors that they sell for ladies. Both are often locked away behind the counters or in a razor blade safe, or worse, requiring you to find someone to help you, and then they have to go through the magic incantations to open the box or door or find the keys or whatever to get your razors. And at the end of all that, you find that other than the differences in color and packaging, the actual razor and blades are exactly the same. And the last time I checked, you don't shave with the packaging, and the color of the handles and accents don't make a razor or blade perform better. So ladies and gentlemen, you need to step up to the convenience and performance of Harry's. Get an amazing shave that you'll look forward to every morning, or however often you shave. Get the savings that come from not having to subsidize the fancy packaging and all the advertising. And get the convenience of having your shaving supplies delivered to your door on your schedule when you want. And there are no requirements to buy shaving gear you don't need. You pick the plan or create your own for as many or as few blades and Harry's shave cream or handles as you need, and then forget it. Harry's will do the rest. Shaving is a little thing and a big thing all at once. If it goes, well, pardon the pun, smooth, it can get the day off to a great start. If it doesn't, then the tone of the day has been set in the wrong direction. So get things going in the right direction right now by visiting harrys.com and ordering a shave package. You can get started with Harry's for as little as $15 or $10 if you use the code MacVoices to take $5 off your first order. That's $5 off your first order with the code MacVoices, and you're on your way to a better shave and a better life. Or at least a lot less frustration with all that razor shopping at the pharmacy. Harry's, the shaving gear you respect, not throw away. Thanks to Harry's for their support of MacVoices.
You know, the crap injection that you mentioned, it reminded me of exactly why when I heard that Satya was going to be the new CEO, I was initially disappointed. And it's because Microsoft is a giant crap injection culture. There's all this fighting between divisions and all of this crap that's being spewed out to sabotage each other's projects. And this is part of the culture that he has been embedded in for years and years and years. So I was actually hoping Microsoft would find someone from outside the company who would come in and say, wow, you guys are just a big crap injection system. We need to start plugging this stuff up.
I think that's a great name for a podcast right there, crap injection. let's start that one afterwards.
Yeah, there you go.
I think we're going to be able to come up with something awesome.
John, take what we've been talking about now, the missteps in communication, contrast it with Apple, which seemed to completely control the conversation, sometimes to the point of, in fact, often to the point of silence, where they don't communicate except what they want to communicate, the way they want to communicate, and when they want to communicate it. They're notorious for this. Is that a better thing, or is that as big a misstep as we see Microsoft? And thank you, Jeff, for bringing up Samsung, because I think it was Jeff or Mark, because that's another place that just missteps galore. So how does Apple's notorious silence figure into this?
Well, I could tell you that as someone who covered Apple for a long time, it was very frustrating when something would happen, that some event or some issue, some problem would come up, and you contact Apple and you would get nothing, just radio silence. And I'd always think, it's much better to address the problem than to ignore it. But Apple has a way of doing things where when a problem arises, they don't talk about it, but in the background, they study it, they figure out what's going on, they do all the research, they do all of the stuff they need to do before they have a statement. And in some ways, if you're a journalist, it's incredibly frustrating. If you're a user, all these things like antenna gate or whatever, if you're a user and you're hearing all this stuff and then everyone's reporting it and the truth is somewhere in between what people are reporting and the silence, and you're getting nothing from Apple, it can be very frustrating. But in the end, they do always have an answer at some point. It might not be the answer you want, but so their method has always been, figure out what's going on, actually research it, figure out what the problem is, and then issue a statement. And that sometimes takes a while, and it can be really frustrating. So I don't know if that's necessarily any better, but it's worked well for Apple, and clearly people still are very attached to the platform. People still buy their products, and so I don't feel like it's hurt Apple any. And then you're talking about the messaging and outsourcing. Apple's now has its own internal ad agency that they're building apparently, and that's another way of sort of controlling the message. And I don't think that Tim Cook is as much of a control freak in terms of the messaging as maybe Steve Jobs was, but he knows how the company runs and how to do it well. And I think the more that they do, keeping it close to the vest and keeping it internal seems to work for them. But from a coverage point, it's incredibly frustrating when you reach out and you get nothing. You call and no one answers, or you email and you just get, it just goes into a black hole. And then 2 days later, you get a message that goes out to every publication. It's the exact same boilerplate message that everyone gets, but at least you can say, this statement was provided to us, as opposed to reporting what some other site when they got the same statement. So that's kind of where it's been, from someone who's had to cover it and deal with Apple PR. And most of the people in the Apple PR team are incredibly nice people too. It's just that especially under the old leadership, it was incredibly locked down. And if you responded to a reporter when you weren't supposed to, that was the end.
So I'd like to explore that for a moment, because it seems to me there's a qualitative difference between responding or not responding and getting your story out in Apple's case versus in the Microsoft case we've been talking about. Is just it's not clear exactly what the message is. It's just so much mush. So as a journalist, what do you look for?
Ideally, PR that's clearly communicated, and people that you can follow up with, and information that is. I mean, you have to expect that a company is going to be acting in its own self-interest. So the doublespeak and marketing talk in anything is going to be to put them in the best light. But then your job is to try to decipher that, figure out what it actually means, and analyze it. And it gets really tricky when there are, 11, 12 paragraphs of gobbledygook about random numbers thrown off that really are to throw you off the bigger picture.
So is it better to have 12 paragraphs of gobbledygook or complete radio silence?
You took my question, Mark.
If you're going to waste my time with 12 paragraphs that say nothing, just say nothing, and save us both the trouble and the headache. But that said, I would much rather have good, clear, open communication channels. And that goes both ways, because if you have PR people that are willing to communicate with you, then we need to be able to communicate back with them, because it's communication is a two-way thing. So if they'll open that channel for me, then I'm happy to reciprocate.
And Mark, this is an interesting way you phrased it, because we're talking to two people here whose jobs are to cover Apple. I'm thinking more from the end user perspective, from the potential buyer perspective, or the existing customer perspective. Which is the better strategy there? I feel like Microsoft, with some of the things that they've done, they would push me away. And I realize I'm speaking from a very biased perspective because I'm not a Microsoft fan, but I've not seen anything not only that doesn't pull me in, it pushes me away. And Apple, for all the difficulties they've caused for Jon and Jeff, I feel like at least when they say something, I get some information. I don't get a lot of spin.
I would agree with that. And you sort of, I guess, just put some of my cards on the table. I was a proud investor of Microsoft from around 95, 96 until when I sold it and a bunch of other companies in 2000. So since then, I've been watching, and Microsoft has basically gone sidewise. It's had a good run and pop up, and basically up 80 or 100% this year with the news of the CEO transition. But it's going a little too fast, too quickly. So I'm not motivated to buy in, but I'm interested to look and continue to watch it, because I believe that, they have lots of assets. And this is the thing that's so frustrating about it is, they're just doing a bad job of communicating. And I don't think it's, that they don't have, good insight and good vision. I think they have, horrible execution problems. As Jeff was saying, I think a lot of those are results of just the way Ballmer chose to run the company. Nadella can change that. I think some of this reorganization is going to be very, very positive. But another point of corporate communication is, forget and set aside for a moment external constituencies. It's, to motivate the troops. And as I said, you read these things, what will you do differently as a result? Maybe I'm just not smart enough to work at Microsoft, but I just don't have a clue. Whereas if you look at, some of the Cook or some of the jobs memos, it's really clear what the direction is, and people can see, okay, I'm in this division, I'm working on this project, this is how I help that thing and move forward. So I think that the shame of all this corporate doublespeak of trying to be accessible and responsible to journalists while saying nothing, I think maybe this has come full circle and it's biting people in the butt, and they should just stay quiet if they don't have anything to say.
So let's step back. And Jeff, how about if I start with you? Let's step back and take a couple other examples that we're all familiar with. Google and Yahoo. Do they do better job, worse job, different job? And if it's different, does the difference paint them as better or worse?
Well, I think Yahoo is better at communicating now with Marissa Mayer running the show than they were before. And I think that's because she actually is working on executing her vision of what the company will be. So that's a good thing. Google, well, Google is in kind of a no-win position here because they fostered this whole culture where we don't trust them anymore, and when I say we, I'm just talking in a general sense where people are not inclined to take Google at face value anymore, and so they can be as clear and straightforward as they want, but people aren't going to trust what they're saying. So, and I don't think that they're always as clear as they ought to be with the things that they're saying. So they're not helping that either. But the bottom line is Google right now is pretty much screwed when it comes to their PR because they need to find a way to rebuild trust.
Yeah, I mean, Yahoo, I just get the feeling that Yahoo doesn't really know what it wants to do. Microsoft Dell may know what he wants to do with Microsoft, but not communicating it very well. With Yahoo, I don't really know that they have a sense of what they want to be right now because they're doing all these different things and sort of throwing, buying up companies, opening new things up, and they're kind of all over the map. She may have a vision for what she wants to do, but I don't feel like I know what that is. I definitely agree.
I don't think any of us know what it is, but I think Marissa does.
Okay. Well, then as a communication issue, then that's definitely a failure there, unless that's what they want is to not communicate it until the pieces are ready. But with Google, I totally agree with you too that, the don't be evil thing doesn't work anymore when the company's whole purpose is you're not the customer, you're what they provide to advertisers, to other people. You're just a means to an end, and they make these cool products that everybody uses, and I use them too. And at a certain point, you just kind of say, do I really care if the information that's in my shared family calendar is going to be used to serve me ads or whatever? You just kind of have to accept that that's what they do. But they have that problem in that you don't trust them because you're not really their customer. You're how they make their money. And their revenues, they make this huge amount of revenue, but what they actually make in profit is a tiny fraction of what Apple makes with these high profit margins. I think a company like Facebook has even a worse problem because you think that it's your playground to post your pictures and share stuff with your friends, but all they want is they want your information to make money. And they've done a terrible job with communicating with privacy. I think it's even worse than Google in that regard, where every day it's, oh, we've heard the feedback and we're changing this hidden feature so that if you click these 5 buttons, you can turn off this one thing that shares what you're doing with all these people. And at the same time, you share something. A friend of mine who just had a new baby reposted her birth announcement because she said, I realized that I posted this the other day and most of my friends didn't even get it. They didn't see it because of the way Facebook hides stuff unless you pay them. Only a small fraction of people actually see it. And it's not like she's got 20,000 followers. It's just a bunch of friends. And the responses were, oh yeah, I didn't even know. I didn't see this post before. It never showed up on my timeline. So I think they're even worse in that regard.
But Jon, thank you for bringing something up that I wanted to ask the group. Now this time I'll start with you and then I'll kick over to Mark. Do these companies owe us communication about what they're going to do or what they want to do? And I realize that there can be an argument about investors, but I think you said something about about Yahoo not telling us until all the pieces are in place, and that makes me wonder. We all sit and follow this stuff like it's oxygen, the way we have to have it to live. But if I'm planning to do something, say with MacVoices, I'm probably not going to announce it until I'm ready to implement it. Do they owe us this kind of information?
As far as I know, you're not a publicly traded company with financial obligations to shareholders and SEC regulations and filings that you have to worry about. And they do. And these big companies, they're very careful. The legal departments are very careful about what gets announced, what gets shown. The term, people joke about the terms of service for all these things. You go to like Facebook and the terms of service might be 40 pages long, and the legalese is something that they're like the EULAs, nobody reads them because even if you did, you wouldn't understand them. And they do that in such a way that most people don't know when they post something what's becoming of their information or how it's being used. And then you get these hoaxes where, they'll say something like, if you don't say that you own the rights to this photo, Facebook owns it, and they can use it, they can sell it to make money. And that's, it's completely fabricated, but because the stuff is so dense and so purposefully obfuscated, there's really no way of knowing. Every time I see something like that, I have to look it up and go to Snopes or something and see, well, is this accurate or is this not? Because I don't really know because I don't understand half the stuff that's in there like most people. So, but I do, to answer your question, I mean, I feel like they owe it to the users to be more forthright about what they're doing with your data or that kind of stuff. But for something like Yahoo, where all the pieces are going to fall, what kind of products they're going to release, what kind of new services they're going to have, that's something that I don't think they need to share, and I wouldn't share that either. But the stuff where it comes to privacy and everything, that's something where I feel all you do, like with Google, is you just breed ill will by purposely hiding it.
Mark, should Apple have told us that the iWatch exists by now?
No, of course not. There's no reason to. But I think stepping back, I think Jon raises another interesting point. Just overall about this whole topic of corporate communications. If you look at terms of service agreements, if you look at different sites out there, they're all over the map. Some are very, very complex, and some are very straightforward to the point. One of the other projects I'm involved in is internet imaging, and photo communication site. And there, if you look at some of the players out there, they have these big, long, dense, impenetrable license terms of service agreements. Some of those companies' names have been mentioned here. In contrast, there are others like I'll give them a plug, 500 Pixels, or Vimeo, that have very clear end user license agreements. They have a little bit of the short legalese, and then to describe exactly what it means and what the intent is. So, unfortunately, we're dealing with the range of human behavior, right? And corporate behavior is nothing but tribal, collective human behavior writ large, and some people will be very, very, very clear, and others will hope, that they can bury something and take advantage of you because you're not paying attention to details. So, ultimately, at the end of the day, does the company owe you a disclosure? Maybe, maybe not. Personally, I think personally, I think that is good business to do so, to share. This is what we believe. This is what we're trying to do. Because if you're trying to look a little too secretive or you're not revealing enough, that makes people uneasy. I don't know, maybe many of the listeners here have been to different corporate training classes where they talk about building rapport and communication. One of the idea is that you need a certain amount of reciprocity of you share things, they share things, and back and forth. And you can't have something very unbalanced where as a company you're trying to get everything and you're sharing absolutely nothing. That I think just maybe if I could paraphrase or channel Jeff, I think maybe that's why Google makes so many people uncomfortable, is there isn't that sort of, you're sucking up absolutely everything I know, and you're not telling me, what you're going to do with it. So there's a difference between, legislated, SEC communications to shareholders. There's a difference, in intent of communicating to customers and communicating to journalists, communicating, to community leaders in which a company does business, communicating to employees, and different styles are recruited for each, are necessary for each. One thing I've seen in a lot of my practice is that a lot of startups, after they get funded and they start to selling, they use language that's totally inappropriate. They use what I call investor language or VC language, which is you talk about the market and how you're going to dominate customers. Well, customers don't like to be dominated. Those sort of ways of speaking are completely inappropriate for a customer. Talking with a customer, it's all about them, their problems, and what you do to solve them. And this needs really crystal clear communication. And I think that, overall, we have, I think we have problems that, there's so much of communication nowadays is really badly mangled. And it's not in the Twitter sense. We have all these super hyper short abbreviations. It's you get, words on top of words that, God on earth, what do they mean?
Yeah, there is something to be said for the Twitter model. As much as it's maligned, you can only do so much damage in 146 characters.
Right.
Well, guys, this has been interesting. I don't know that we solved anything. I do think that there needs to be a push for more clear, concise communication, just because then we wouldn't be having these conversations and second-guessing everyone. You'd know what was going on, and you could move on. And I sometimes think that might be the answer to everything. Apple might be one of the best out there, and they're still not perfect either, because they make Jeff and John's job so hard.
Apple.
Any parting thoughts, gentlemen, across the board? Jeff?
This whole thing with communication from these companies, I made a joke at the beginning about this being Satye's Kobayashi Maru. Corporate communication, in many cases, really is a no-win scenario for all these companies. You just can't make everyone happy. And all they can do is hope that they effectively communicate what they want their message to be. And I think right now, Microsoft is not doing a good job of that. Google, I think, is doing an excellent job of communicating what they want us to hear. It's just not the message that we would like to have. And Apple is getting much better at it. Samsung, whatever.
John, can you top that?
Nah, I won't even try. I think that if companies want really good and honest communications, they should just hire the guy from Comcast. Who berated Ryan for hours, because at least that's honest, Why would you ever want to change? That's what we need more. We need more honesty of that. No, I think that there has to be a middle ground. The doctrine of what we can get away with shouldn't be the standard for corporate communications or for terms of service or for end user licensing or anything. there needs to be, obviously they need to meet their fiduciary responsibilities and the legal stuff to keep from getting sued. But in the end, you can't just treat your customers as money, a money-making machine and expect to keep them. So the way that these companies communicate, like you said, Apple's not perfect, Samsung's terrible, Microsoft's somewhere in between, but they're trying, I think. There has to be a better way of doing this, and they just keep trying.
Mark?
I think I'll be the first to quote John D. Rockefeller on the MacJury. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should listen and talk accordingly. And it doesn't matter if you're a person or a corporation.
Well, corporations are people, so.
Yes.
That's true. So they are.
That's profound. What happened to General Patton's quote, Mark? Or are we saving that for another time?
Oh, let's do it. Maybe if you want to do an after show set of bloopers.
I guess my final take on it is, guys, you're not going to hide anything in 12 paragraphs of gobbledygook, because there are going to be people like John and like Jeff who read through it and are going to boil it down and get your message out there, no matter how good or bad it is. But stop making it so difficult, because the rest of us, it detracts from your message, and frankly, it detracts from your credibility. That's mine. Jeff Gamet, thanks for being here. Great to see you as always.
Thanks for having me on. It's always awesome to be here.
Yeah. Jon Seff, thank you for being here for the first time. I hope you'll come back and make it a regular thing. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
And Mark Fuccio, it's always good to see you and have some of your wisdom from the practical side of the business of tech.
Chuck, it was great to be here. Obviously, I have some strong opinions about this, and hope your listeners think about them. And if they disagree, they can reach me via Twitter.
Absolutely. And I'll have everybody's Twitter links in the show notes, of course, folks, so you can contact them directly or contact me at chuck@MacVoices.com. Guys, we'll do it again soon. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thanks.
Folks, until the next time, this is the MacJury on MacVoices. I'm Chuck Joyner. As always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the MacVoices Dispatch, to stay up to date on all the latest MacVoices news from our front page or at MacVoices.com/newsletter. Advertising and sponsorships handled by Backbeat Media at BackbeatMedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at CashFly.com.